you. Thank you so much, Dean Dobson. So good to be here and participating in the speaker series. I prepared kind of some things on innovation that I thought were relevant and interesting, a little bit of a case study on some of the successes we've seen at Rosewood. But before I get started, I'll just tell you a little bit about myself. And I went ahead and I put my email address as well as my LinkedIn profile. If you want to reach out, happy to always be available for anybody that wants to reach out after the discussion today. As Dean Dobson had mentioned, I'm the group vice president, really managing the commercial activities for the Rosewood brand. Also, we have two other brands that I'm also in charge of. As mentioned, we're Hong Kong based. I like to believe we are, kind of the up and coming leader in the luxury hotel segment or, category. We're relatively new to the scene with kind of our newest ownership. So in 2011, the brand was purchased by Sonia Cheng and really transformed. So the brand itself is about they're 40 years old, actually, started by another pioneer female leader named Caroline Hunt, purchased by Sonia Chang in, like I said, 2011. And she's really made it her mission and vision to really transform luxury under the Rosewood flag and to expand our portfolio of hotels. We have about 29 hotels today globally. We are going to double in size in the next 3 to 5 years. We have a tremendous amount of growth ahead of us in a lot of really exciting destinations. And I think, when I was thinking about the students, and we can talk a little bit about this in the Q&A, what I find most exciting is when I see our portfolio today. We have 8 hotels in the US and Canada. About half of our jobs open today are in this region. So we have about 500 jobs open in hospitality. About 250 are really opened in the 8 hotels in the US. So, to me, that's a really, you've picked the right industry. This is an exciting time with a lot of opportunity. So I'm excited to be here and help you navigate kind of your next steps. So I thought today I'd talk about a few different things. And, because I'm in charge of commercial activity, which is really revenue, I would share a little bit about what we've gone through and kind of what we've seen. I'm happy to report that in spite of the COVID situation we have globally, our portfolio of hotels, combined portfolios, will actually finish this year on budget, on plan that we budgeted earlier in the year. And that's because of a lot of innovation and thinking, and also the acceleration we've seen globally in the leisure segment. So I'll talk a little bit about kind of how we manage that. Secondly, I'll really talk about, so how do you stay engaged when everybody is remote? That is changing, but really we've been doing most of our selling remotely and engaging clients throughout this process. And how do you develop content? How do you plan for that? And a few examples of our deployment. First, I'd say, with COVID, there was a lot of things that we had to think about. One was, as this happened, and this is something that has never really happened before. So we were faced with a lot of uncertainty, and a lot of things came out, client needs, hygiene needs, travel restrictions, demand by segment. We all know different segments of business came back at different times. And this was even so in regions. China opened up very quickly, and it was business as usual, while the hotels in Europe shut down, and eventually the US hotels shut down to be reopened in different phases. And actually, some of the hotels we have in Southeast Asia still remain closed because of the situation in that. So really adapting kind of how things were changing in different global environments. And then how do you really balance, safety and hygiene with experience and value? How can you charge the same if you're offering less? Or and you're also seeing, kind of different protocols happening. And then really having a clear strategy on pricing to make sure that, what you're doing will eventually lead you out of this pandemic and back to a normalized environment. You don't want to drop pricing too low. You want to make sure that you curtail this period of time and the impact as quickly as possible, and really come out of this in a good way. So, so really kind of we thought about a lot of things, right? This is a general marketing funnel. How do you do it? Where do you find customers? I think what was really interesting about the pandemic was very quickly we kind of isolated all of our efforts in what was called then kind of coined travel bubble, right? So we knew that the majority of our guests would come within a 500-mile proximity. So we really shifted all of our marketing efforts to be segmented to those travel bubbles. What we found was all of our travelers to a certain hotel or location actually came 311 miles away on average. So to really focus in on those different segments of travelers and communicate to them very differently. So how we were communicating to California travelers was very different than how we were communicating to those in the Middle East or in Asia, based on those kind of those proximity requirements that we had defined as travel bubbles. So everything got segmented really down to this very small radius of how we communicated to clients during this time. And then how do we find new clients, in this phenomenon, and how do we communicate to existing clients and kind of continue to retain their loyalty through a tricky time? So a few things we thought about it. It was really interesting kind of when I look back at this. It seems so long ago, but so familiar. So if you recall, everything shut down and there was no traveling. It was really halted. Most hotels closed, all of ours included. And so how do we retain kind of communication with our clients when there really wasn't a reason to tell them to come because our hotels were closed for a few months? But we started to create programmatic elements about travel that they could think about at home. So we called it Journey in Place. And that was really about, we did remote classes, yoga classes, we did remote cooking classes, we did all kinds of remote learning that was happening on property through a lot of our hotels, but also said you can enjoy these kind of tips and information at home and think about travel, right? Dream about travel. And we really did that as a way to remain relevant and get everybody thinking about returning to Rosewood in a time where they really weren't thinking about travel at all. So, this was a really good idea to kind of remain engaged and get people thinking and dreaming and knowing that once they were able to buy stay at a hotel, and once we reopened, they would be thinking Rosewood. The other thing we thought about was, and I was very quick because everything really circulated around hygiene and how hygiene was going to inform the way we operated. And I kind of said, hold on, operations team. When I'm talking to the clients, I'm not hearing hygiene. Their kind of expectation is we will be hygiene focused. It will be clean. It will be safe. Really, what was in the mind of the travelers was, if I risk, getting sick, if I travel to a place with my family and go through some of this difficulty, will it be worth it, right? Is your pool open? Is your spa open? What am I going to get for it? So we did a lot of customer surveys before we really reemerge and open. And the customer survey was to say, what do you expect when you get here? What do you want to see when you get here? And it really informed our operational team, not just to put plastic over everything and sanitize well, but to say, no, any move you make in the luxury segment and you take away something, you need to add something. So if you're looking to reinvent kind of hygiene, you need to make it beautiful. Instead of plastic, it needs to be a glass domed amenity. Instead of different things, think about how do you make this delivered in a luxury environment and interesting to the clients. And it's not about, closing food and beverage outlets, about putting them outdoors. How do you reinvent this experience and make it just as rich and layered as it would be non-COVID? Because guess what? We're not lowering our prices. As a matter of fact, our costs went up and we increased our prices. So we really did a lot of surveys to try to find out, like, what do people want? And these were focus groups. These were calls with me and the president of our company, and really trying to understand what's going to inspire you and your clients to travel. And there was a lot done in this, and it really helped us accelerate and focus in on the right things. The other thing that we did, which I think was really interesting while we were closed, was we really became advocates of the industry. And that was through a program we launched called Rosewood Raise, right, when we reopened the hotels. And it was really about supporting our associates globally and the crisis that they were feeling during the pandemic. So everybody was furloughed. There was a lot of, there was medical costs if people got sick. There were things that we needed to do to step in as an industry. So we raised over $2.4 million internally by really leaning into this program and advocating for our industry, and really helped provide grants and support to many of our associates. And that really resonated well with our clients, who loved coming to the hotels because they loved the employees that they would see year after year when they would return, and who was close to their families. And then we started to, educate them through a whole series of webinars. And so the series was kind of our recovery. So what you could expect when you would come back, and Las Ventanas is a well-known resort in Los Cabos, Mexico, very expensive, very chic. And so, we had clients we knew that wanted to come, but they wanted to know what were they going to experience. So we did a very, we did an entire series before every hotel would open, going out to travel agents and travel professionals and telling them, here's what you're going to expect, here's how it's going to work, and this is what, giving them a lot of confidence to send their travelers to us. And then we responded to kind of the uncertainty. So we created a lot of programs that allowed them to feel safe booking a meeting, but knowing they had flexibility in canceling it, that they could book a room with us and they had some, again, flexibility in canceling us. We take a lot of deposit up front. We have very strict policies. And so in this case, we created a lot of ways for them to feel like they could make a buying decision, but they had the flexibility of canceling it without penalties to allow them to get through those barriers of uncertainty. And then last but not least, one of the major things we did was all the trade shows were canceled globally. So we developed our own virtual trade show, and it was pretty extensive. We had it multi-brand. We did it in we did it in the US, we did it in Europe, and we did it in Asia. We did it in multi-language in Asia as well, Chinese, Mandarin, and English. And we did this to really reach our clients who we knew were longing to kind of reconnect with us, but that was really not possible. We did this in January of 2021. And really that was a huge success for us because it got all of our hotels, like a mini virtual trade show, in front of all of these clients globally. And through the course of these 3 days, we had 3,800 appointments scheduled, 950 attendees. We had 90 plus hotel representatives. We had webinars. We had all kinds of, we even had live entertainment at the end, a big party, and we had bands playing from different hotels, and really created this really great atmosphere that connected our clients with the brand in an environment that was really hard and different for us to manage because, obviously in sales, it's all about personal relationships. It's face to face. And in this case, it was a huge success and really something we were quite proud of and actually generated quite a bit of business from as well. So I know I kind of speed talked a little bit, but I don't have a clock on my computer when I'm presenting, so I was a little concerned with time. But that was just a snippet of kind of the things that we were thinking about during pandemic. And like I said, really happy to say that, we've successfully kind of got to our benchmark year, which is making our top line budget through the course of kind of this, re-innovation and thinking about how to kind of meet clients where they are when they want to book and how to accelerate those different segments during the course of this year and through this pandemic.
Caroline, can you maybe tell a little bit about your journey through kind of post high school and your career path to where you got here?
Sure. Mine's a funny story, but I'll share it. So when I finished high school, I didn't really have the means to go to college. So I kind of thought about, kind of how I was going to kind of work through, two things. One, I love to travel, and one, I wanted to go to school. So I joined the military. And so I joined the Air Force, and it kind of afforded me two things. It afforded me the opportunity to go to college, and it afforded me the opportunity to travel. So I quickly picked every international location I could be based at when they ask you the question, where do you want to go after what do you want to be? And so I went into computer programming, and I was stationed. My first assignment was in Germany. So I did 2 years in Germany. I went to University of Maryland through their extended coursework there. And then I re-enlisted to stay in Europe because you had to have a certain amount of years on your enlistment. So I then went to Madrid, and I was stationed in Madrid for about 4 years. And then when I came back to the US, I came back at a time where I thought I was going to go back into programming, and I moved up to Northern California, where hospitality was really one of the #1 industries. So I got a job at a hotel thinking that, this is temporary. I was going to go back into computer work, and really, I always say, kind of it picked me. I didn't really pick it, but I started to do it. I was in sales at the time at a Best Western, a little hotel, and I continued to just work really hard, and then I was afforded new opportunities, all in sales. And then I got a promotion from there, and then I went to a better brand, and then I got a better job, and then I went to a better brand, and then got a better job, and on and on. And I really believe, for me at least, it was, a real commitment, strong work ethic, and really kind of not really seeing anything as a barrier, just knowing that if I worked hard and continued, I would, find greater opportunities. And, I'm so happy to say, I tell everybody, it's like, you really just have to just shine. You just have to have a great attitude, and take whatever assignments people give you. And the assignments get bigger, and even in my job today, I'm about to transition from revenue and into operations. And the CEO came to me and said, would you be interested in this role, which I actually have no real background in. And it was really that she saw that, I try to find opportunities to show value to my organization today, even outside of the job that I have. And, and she rewarded me with a kind of a bigger opportunity, with this next job. And so I always urge everybody is just like, ask for whatever assignment comes your way. You don't always have to get compensated for it, but those opportunities come to those people who are willing to take them. And that's really kind of what my journey's been about.
Thank you. We have a question in the chat from Faith, and I'd also like to open it up to anyone who would like to answer a question, because we're a large size group. If you can raise your hand if you would like to speak on camera, and if not, you can put in the chat, and I'll try to alternate between those two. So the first question from Faith says, do you have any advice for somebody who struggles with mental health, and how do you handle bad days and weeks while still maintaining and being on the ball to complete tasks and responsibilities?
That's a good one. I am kind of I'm always just, glass half full. So I'm always one thinking about, I have a choice when I wake up, and my choice is to like let the challenges I have weigh on me, which, trust me, I've been in. If I thought about them all, I probably never sleep. But it's really thinking about the opportunities that are in front of me, and it's not easy. And I'd say this year has been horribly challenging on everybody, but I always just think about possibilities and kind of really mustering through every day, one day at a time. So I will check off the things and just keep pressing forward, and not letting it get you down, because tomorrow's a better day, and you kind of can't take it all on, so you just have to take it in small pieces, and do what you can, and then keep going. So it's a tough one, I'd say, particularly during COVID, but one that kind of serves me well is just to keep thinking about what's going right, and then what I need to accomplish to kind of get through this next day.
Thank you. Tristan, you have your hand up?
Yes, I do. Do you mind if I ask a question?
Go ahead.
Alrighty. Thank you again, by the way, Mrs. MacDonald, for the presentation. I know one of the biggest issues that the hospitality industry is facing right now is staffing. The whole country is going through a labor shortage right now, and I actually just read a news article this morning about how hotels, including the one I'm working at, are so short on staff right now. Housekeeping isn't doing a daily routine anymore at most locations. So considering that you're with a luxury company, how do you all combat the lack of hands available while still offering the best service that you could possibly give?
That's a great question. I think, what we've done, and it's really actually been, I think, an answer to some of it, is we've sized our operation down. So we've scaled down and said, okay, if in fact, in many hotels we've done this, and actually they've been more profitable in some instances, we sized our business down and said, okay, if we don't have enough staff to clean, I'll make up the number, 150 rooms kind of in a regular basis, then we kind of sized the operation down to 100 rooms. And that's really afforded us, number one, to continue our level of service. And number two, drive profit, because we're really concentrating our business into kind of that peak period and not necessarily being ready for, varied demand. So, midweek and weekends being a little bit slower, we really kind of taken off that peak and valley and maintained a level of room inventory that probably allows us to drive greater guest service and actually even greater profit. So we've ratcheted down our business and constrained some of it in a lot of areas, because that's just that's the only way you can kind of really address that. And I think some restaurants have done that as well. It's easier when you're in a luxury segment to do that than if you're in a large volume commodity segment, because you don't have a lot of margin to work with. For us, it's kind of the opposite. As long as we keep it tight and compressed, we can make good money and give good service at the same time. So it's a little bit of a different business model that has thus far, knock on wood, has allowed us to maintain, good business and good service.
Okay, thank you so much.
We have 3 questions in the chat. The first would be, could you please share what MICE means with the students?
Oh, yeah, meetings and incentives. So those are meetings and incentives. So in our business, a lot of our group clients, I guess it would be categorized like group and convention, are reward trips. So, it could be banking, it could be automotive, but those top sellers within those organizations, they get reward trips, and the reward trips are usually at luxury places, which makes them a good value to work hard and do lots of sales. So that's kind of the segment of businesses is our sweet spot, which is meetings, corporate meetings and incentives.
Next question in the chat is from somebody who'd like to know more about your Rosewood Raise program and what a.
Yeah. So Rosewood Raise, it was something that was really kind of an answer to the struggling, it was really actually, it started off, believe it or not, we have one of our other brands is located, the hotel, we have a hotel in Wuhan, which is where the pandemic began. And there was a lot of difficulty in that region when the pandemic hit. And so we were sending a lot of supplies to the employees in that region. So there were masks, we were sending all kinds of supplies. And that really ballooned into an effort to help employees as a pandemic moved from China into Europe and into the US to address difficulties our associates were having in different markets. So we started fundraising for that, and we fundraised with our vendors, we fundraised with our associates, with the owners of our hotels, actually, with our guests that really cared about our clients, our travel partners. And then once we amassed really this money, then we had a professional company really do the grant process, and grants were awarded to hundreds of associates throughout the globe for medical treatment, for groceries, for rent relief, for a variety of different things that helped them, weather through the situations they were facing. So it was a really nice way for us to take care of our team in a time where, difficulty ranged in different locations.
Thank you. Next question is, Rosewood has a lot of women in leadership. It's quite inspiring. Can you talk about leadership and leading your team?
Yeah, I'm so proud of that. It starts with a female CEO for sure, but I would say, it's she'll say this, that she really, she's not biased from a gender standpoint. She just really hires the right people for the right job. And I think that's really been, that's just happened. It's just happened. We have a lot of work to do still in different roles in the hotels as well. But I think it's an area that we want to continue to, hire a diverse group of leaders. And I think that's been a real focus of hers in the last few years. And it's been really great. So I think that's it's something we all really, really thrive to have. And I think those different perspectives also make you a better management team and leadership team, is to have different points of view, different perspectives. So that's an area that we do lean into, and it does kind of express itself right now with a lot of women.
Can you talk a little bit about supply chain issues on the restaurant side and how you're addressing those?
Yeah, supply, we're getting hit quite hard. We have 3 hotels that are opening in the next 3 months. One just opened. And a lot of them are delayed because of the shipping issues and the bottleneck that we're seeing with things that are manufactured and brought in from outside the US. We're not seeing it as much on the restaurant side, believe it or not. Like that area we've been okay with because we do a lot of kind of local products, and that seems to be okay. But it's some of the case goods, furnishings, things like that for some of our new hotels that are opening that is becoming challenging. And we're doing a lot of different things. We're trying to kind of scale our openings to see what we can kind of get open early, opening smaller scale than if everything's not there together, kind of mixing and matching things to get open, but knowing that some things will be delayed. Some of the restaurants, we have a restaurant we're opening up in St. Bart's. We bought temporary tables for one of our restaurants, and just because we know that the tables won't show up for another few months because of the supply chain issue. They're on a boat somewhere. So a lot of it is just adapting. But it's been a challenge, but not as large of a challenge as I know in some other brands and that are more reliant upon, kind of goods coming in.
Gloria, you have your hand raised?
Yes, Ms. MacDonald, so you've mentioned that you take the opportunity that you're given, or you even ask for the opportunity, even if it might not be part of your job description. But can you tell us a little bit about how you have that professional confidence to be willing to, reach for the next thing, even if it's something that might seem daunting?
Yeah, I guess I look at it like all these jobs, every one of you could do my job. I promise you. I think it's about having confidence, right? Because we can all learn anything, and having desire, just saying, hey, I'm not going to get it right 100%, but I'm going to try, and I'm going to be really enthusiastic about it, right? And I'm going to be a cheerleader about it, and I'm going to be confident about it. I'm going to learn it, So I don't think anybody's ever had the job that they step into, but we all should know that we have capacity and capabilities. And I always tell everybody, play to your strengths. I know that I can do, and I'm super confident in that area. And I probably wouldn't be the best chef, and I don't try to fake that part, but I think it's kind of picking an area that you have an affinity for, and you have just innate strength, and really those are the areas I will lean into. And even if they're outside of my discipline, and sometimes some of it's not doing it, but helping my peers, and it might be helping a colleague in finance or in operations and saying, hey, if you need help, let me know. So I think it's really just being there to support your colleagues that might be in those areas, and that's sometimes how you would naturally start to grow and to fill in. So it comes in a bunch of different ways, but I think it's just always, it's always just lending help, and whatever shape and form that looks like.
Great, thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
We'll go to Jason's question in the chat before we move on to Tiffany and Ruth. Jason's asked, does Rosewood have a forecast for when international travel will return to the 2019 level?
So interestingly enough, we have 11 hotels in our portfolio that have exceeded 2019 already. And those are hotels that are driven by leisure travel. So these are our resorts. So I'm happy to say, so budgeting this year was really interesting because everybody wanted to exceed the expectations. And because we know that there's a lot of travel that is constrained into certain areas. And once the borders open up globally, that probably isn't going to repeat itself. So the hotels that have enjoyed kind of above 19 levels are resorts, Mexico, California specifically. And then now some of our Tuscany projects, some of the resorts, Sanya in China, the ones that are not yet recovered from 2019, those are dependent upon international travel, long haul travel. And we're really predicting that it's going to look a little bit uneven, but we believe that, you know, Europe is opening up as we speak. Today, I think, is the first day that international travel from Europe came to the US. And so we're starting to see that happen, and that cross-pollination there. So we think Europe's going to be the next kind of area in the next year, and then probably Asia, China, and then Southeast Asia last, because of the way that their vaccine rollout and some of the restrictions there. But we anticipate that all of our portfolio will be fully recovered in 2023. So that's really kind of everything. And we think that Asia will likely open up kind of neighboring borders in Q2 after the Olympics in Beijing. And then it'll open up for international travel, inbound, outbound in Asia without quarantine, probably in Q3, Q4 of next year. So that's when we'll really start to see things, I think, kind of open up once Asia opens up. But 2023 is the year we're kind of seeing full recovery.
Tiffany, you have your hand raised?
Yes. Hi, good evening. Hi, Ms. MacDonald. Thank you so much for your presentation. Before your presentation, you did mention that you were on like a little traveling circle area going to London and Paris. As someone who loves traveling, like myself, I just wanted to ask you how you juggle between professional and personal, like work life when it comes to traveling. How do you have the time and all that?
Yeah, it's that's a good question. Yeah, so this trip, I'm really fortunate. I went to Mexico on Wednesday. I came to Texas. I'm in Dallas right now. Today is Monday. I'll leave back to LA, then I'll go to New York on Saturday, and then I go to Miami, and then I go to London, then Paris, which I'm really excited about. But you know, two things. I have a good support system because I was a single parent at the very beginning of my kind of sales job, and so I moved my mother in with me actually. She's never left, but a long time ago, to help me with my daughter. And then, you know, just really kind of balancing, you know, what my job needed and what I needed, and having kind of a good support system. I will say early on when I was doing sales, it was domestic. It was kind of a market that was quite close to my home. So I didn't have kind of the expanse of global travel at the time. So I was able to also, you know, my work kind of travel has changed with my personal life and my ability to travel a little differently. So I think when I was younger and I had a small child, I measured how much time I spent away from home, where now I don't really have a lot of restrictions. My husband's really understanding, so he likes me to be happy, and I'm happy when I'm traveling. So it all works out good, but it's balance, you know, it's kind of figuring out kind of the right role and the right, you know, at the right time.
Thank you. Ruth, you have your hand raised?
Yes, thank you for the presentation again. It was very interesting. So my question kind of has more than one part to it. So you mentioned that Rosewood Hotel Group was a luxury hotel company, and they're in the process of opening new locations. And my question has to do with like the fact that you guys struggled during the pandemic to continue to open up your locations and have business going on. And I wanted to know what were some changes that needed to be made and ways for you to adapt during this time, and how did those differ from the ways of managing a traditional hotel company versus luxury hotel?
Yeah, I think, like I said, I think what we did really early on was we and this is kind of an interesting exercise, and I think has led to part of our success here. We took a look at every past kind of crisis. So we looked at SARS in China, we looked at the financial crisis in the US, and we looked at hotel recovery in every instance that we could kind of look at. And what we found was, it was really interesting. What we found was hotels that dropped their rates more than 10% added 15 months onto their recovery, 15 more months onto the recovery than hotels that didn't. So we made a decision very early on, number one, to keep our prices high, but offer value. And that really allowed us to not look at a huge kind of reduction in things, right? So services, housekeeping, et cetera, et cetera. So we kept our prices quite high. And even though our instinct was to lower them when you don't know if business is coming, and we really looked at, what do you take away and what do you replace it with? And what we found was, which I think is really interesting, and I think the phenomenon of QR codes, right? QR codes have been around for a bazillion years, but not readily adopted, except for in Asia. And things like that really reduce the cost of printing menus every day, right? And they were very efficient. They were adopted very quickly. I think some other things that occurred, which is, housekeeping, while we offered it every day, we found guests opting out of it because they didn't want people in the room during this time. So it was a savings there. So there was a lot of things that happened organically without really reducing service, but really kind of adopting to guest needs. And so saying, would you like nightly turned down or not? How do you want housekeeping to look? And so you found people reducing things even when you didn't plan on reducing them. So I think there were things that, closing outlets where you kind of felt like you needed to have a lot of facilities open. Well, there really wasn't. As long as you had, interesting options open, that you didn't really need as many as you thought you needed and still could deliver that type of service. So there was a lot of kind of innovation happening that, and I don't want to say this kind of negatively, but you have a lot of things that you don't know you don't need until you take them away. And what was nice about it is we kind of modified our services to adapt to kind of the return of travel. Some of the things we didn't need as much as we thought. So it kind of organically happened itself. And, you kind of do more with less when you have less. So even when we had less employees, we would modify like what we could manage and then what we could staff to. And sometimes that created some efficiencies that you wouldn't have been forced into in the past.
Thank you.
Anna, you have your hand raised?
Hi, Caroline. Thank you for sharing with us today. My question for you is, from your experience in marketing and the insights from customers that you've gained, what trends do you see coming up for the hospitality industry?
It's so funny because I do think, I'm not a big trend follower, believe it or not, but I think that what differentiates, kind of experiences is the personalization. So when I travel and people kind of get my needs met and they get it right and it feels intuitive and it feels pretty seamless, I think that really creates value. And I always tell people, it's like, when you go to a restaurant with relatively mediocre food, but the maitre d' fusses all over you and gives you a special table and makes you feel really important. And it's like you go back and you love it and you overlook a lot because of that personal, attention you get. And I do think really it goes back to, that feeling of personalization, feeling important, being recognized. And that part I think is going to continue to stay. And even I think the bar is going to be raised. And I think technology will also be helpful in that. Kind of goes back to the efficiency. Contactless check-in, which I think most of our hotels have done on my travels thus far, has been brilliant. How great is that not to have to deal with a front desk and check in, and it's seamless and it's effective, and we collect your information, so it's really great, so we can market to you. So I think some of these things, they feel like you're giving me better service, but they're also being super efficient. And so I kind of go back to, I think those things, anything to make the travelers, travel a little easier, a little seamless, less hassle, less engagement if they don't want it. And then if they do get engagement from you, it's the way you want it. And I think that will really be, the next level, is how do you do that with technology, as well as, how do you, still have that the high touch personalization where you need it. So I think it'll be a combination.
Our next question comes from the chat. Does Rosewood manage all of their hotels? Do you have any franchise agreements? How many do you own? So a little bit more about the corporate structure of Rosewood.
So we own about half of our portfolio today, and we manage the other half. They're owned by third parties. We don't franchise the Rosewood brand. We also have another brand called New World, which we've talked about it. We haven't yet gone into franchises and management. We own most of those hotels. And then we have some other brands that we're looking at franchising in China. But right now, I don't think Rosewood will go into a franchise. It'll stay managed. We now now that we've got some momentum, most of our future hotels are owned by other people, and we're just doing strictly a management contract with them.
Thank you. Next question says, can you tell us a little bit more about sustainability in the luxury sector?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think sustainability is important, and it's great that there's a lot of pressure to do it. For us, there's, it's a couple things. Number one, it's the right thing to do. Number two, guests are now really wanting it, particularly the luxury sector. They really want to know that they don't want to have lots of plastic bottles and lots of plastic stuff. They really want to they want to have their hotel experiences have kind of that embodied in them. And then I think the third thing is that you can be more efficient and more profitable if you do it right. So, I think that that's something that hotels are getting on board with, and whether it's utilities, whether it's plastic, whether it's food waste, I think all of the above, if there are ways in which you can be more sustainable, I think it's going to be more appealing for recruiting talent. It's going to be more appealing for the clients that are staying with you. And I really believe you can drive more profit after some initial investment and thinking around it. So it's something that we've actually just hired a sustainability officer. So our leadership is very, very committed to taking it to the next level and really making a difference. Because I think to this stage, we've been dabbling in it, and some people do it, some hotels do it well, some hotels don't. And now we're really making a strong push toward, having goals and really leaning into this idea and kind of walking the talk.
Thank you. Our next question is about internships. Do you have any insight if Rosewood is offering internships?
We do. We offer internship. We offer management trainees every year. As a matter of fact, our HR department offered to do one of these actually. But there's we do management trainees and internships globally. I think we open up our management trainee roles in November. Those are year-long assignments that are kicked off. So those would be graduates. But we do offer all of the above: internships as well as management trainee opportunities for graduates.
Next question says, can you please speak to about your decision processes? You mentioned keeping customers engaged at home during the pandemic, surveying customers to find out how to add value, engaging in industry advocacy, conducting webinars to educate customers as to what they'll get out of their visit. What is the process Rosewood engages in to arrive at these decisions?
I think we lead it on the sales side. We do a lot of, because I think what happens is different people organizationally react to different things different ways. And we always kind of go back to, what does a customer think? What does a customer want? What does a customer? So before we go kind of adapting a business idea, let's make sure that it's kind of customer centered and customer centric, that we're not just doing it for ourselves. We're not doing it because we think that people want it, but really it's led from this belief that if the customer is kind of centered in that decision making, then we're probably heading down or spending a lot of time in the right area. So often, before we head into something, we'll do a survey, with a group of individuals, even to the point of when we build hotels, we'll go out to some of our key travel advisors and say, what are clients? And we have a board of advisors, and we will pose them with some questions. What are clients looking for? And it could be facilities, it could be meals, what type of food is kind of, of interest, what could be technology. So we do a lot of customer focus groups with kind of our key travel advisory board to get a pulse on what's happening out in the industry, as well as what they're hearing from clients, you know, good and bad, of what the feedback that they're receiving. So that's kind of the process, is to gather information before we kind of embark down a road.
What does Rosewood use to attract potential investors and developers?
We have a global development team. So we have somebody located in almost just every region, and, you know, they're salespeople. So they know all the investors. They are out there, you know, kind of meeting people, looking at projects. Sometimes we'll meet people on a project. The project isn't for us, but 3 years later, they come back and they have a different project. A lot of our projects are also, you know, could be an investor that has multiple projects with us. So they feel good about the brand, they feel good about our performance, and they do new deals with us. So it comes a variety of ways. It comes from some of the executives have investor relations from previous jobs they've held and relationships. So it's we have a professional development organization, business development, that is looking for investors, and they find us. And then there's a lot of word of mouth as well. So it comes a few different ways.
And we'll finish up with this last question from Anna. What would you say sets Rosewood apart from other luxury brands?
Oh, wow. That's always a hard one. I think it's a few things. You know, one is the design for sure. I think if you go and see Rosewoods, they're really special, and that comes from kind of the design aesthetic. And, you know, it also comes from a young CEO. Sonia's about 40 years old, I think now. She really thinks about what does that next iteration of luxury look like for a traveler. You know, I don't say a modern traveler, but a new traveler. So I think there's always this idea that, you know, what is the next kind of iteration, you know, feel like, and how do we design for that so it feels current? And then I think the next part is this idea behind relationship hospitality, and how we really ratchet up the service to be personalized, to let kind of it speak through our employees and not be prescribed. And that really shines through in each location that you go to. You'll know it's a Rosewood, but not because it looks the same, or because it's kind of the opposite. It's kind of embodies this sense of place. So Mexico feels like you're in Mexico, and Paris feels like you're in Paris. And you wouldn't go to a hotel and say this could be anywhere, which I won't name any brands, but some brands you go to and you're like, okay, this hotel could be the same hotel in Boston as it is in Florida, as it is in these other cities. I think you're always going to kind of have that infused sensibility from the destination that you're in. And I think kind of those three things combine as a design, you know, that cultural element, as well as the employee piece, is really the three things that we think are differentiators for us, you know, with the today's competitive market. Yeah, thank you so much. I do have to run. I have another call, but thank you so much for including me on tonight's call. I really appreciate it. And like I said, you have my information, so if anybody wants to reach out to me directly, I'm open for email exchange.